Thank you for attending today's session on integrating Bricsnet Enterprise with building information models and geographic information systems. We'll begin by looking at the business use case, the various types of building information models, and take a brief look at the Bricsnet environment, and then go into the demonstration for today's use case around the work orders, and then talk about the value proposition. For this use case, the building information model originates in the Onuma software environment, which actually could have inputs from everything from Revit to ArchiCAD, Google Earth, even Excel. And as you'll see, there's inputs from Bricsnet as well. On the right-hand side of the chart, you can see there are various outputs, including back into ArchiCAD, Excel, IFC, BIM, XML, COBie, and others. For this use case, we'll be looking at either Excel, BIM, XML, or COBie. For our purposes, we use web services and the BIM XML to export information from the Onuma environment into Bricsnet. In which case, we pulled in information about building floor, space type, assets, and then created a work order that we then pushed that information back up. Actually, it was pulled back by web services into the Onuma environment. Before we go any further, though, we should take a look at the various types of building information models that exist. Traditionally, architects and designers have been giving clients 2D CAD drawings or paper drawings, and then lists of types of furniture, fixtures, and equipment that would go in there. To better convey that, another way of doing it would be to have a photorealistic type of model that may or may not contain data. There are also things such as 3D massing models that also may or may not contain data. They may have hyperlinks to other locations. Another form are actually intelligent building objects, where objects have all this data. In this case, they could be obtaining that information from various electronic catalogs that architects and engineers can draw from. There's 4D BIM, which includes working with the project schedule. Another form of model is 5D BIM, where it includes the estimating and financials with the building information model. We know that there's a lot of value during the architectural engineering and construction side of using BIM. The question gets to be, how do we use the BIM model for facility management? Taking a quick look at the Bricsnet Enterprise environment, we can see that there are 14 modules that currently exist. And we're bolstering the application with a quick start, BIM GIS, improving our benchmarking and sustainability. And we know that our customers integrate their applications with HR, finance, IT, and security. We also know that people who are creating the BIM model, architects, engineers, and contractors, are putting a lot of information into the BIM model that we want to be able to include in facility operations. We also know that the BIM model is also being used by permitting agencies, both local and federal, as well as utilities. And we want to be able to have access to some of that information as well. We want to be able to extract information from the BIM area, the BIM models, and also the IWMS applications in finance and HR, and do things like benchmarking with BOMA and IFMA, input information into Energy Star and LEED. We also know that there's other organizations outside of ours that want access to information, a composite of all of this type of information. We hope to achieve that through interoperability, working with the Open Standards Consortium for Real Estate. For this demonstration, we're going to use a building located in Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, located in San Francisco Bay. And this building is a 3 to 4 story building. We're going to assume that the tenant that's located in that building already has 2 floors and is going to lease out the 3rd floor. And the 3rd floor is the new design, in which case we are going to pull in all the space information, the asset information, and create a work order, and then take that information and push, and then actually have Onuma pull that information back up into the BIM environment. We're now logging into the Bricsnet Enterprise environment, and upon opening, the first thing you come across is our dashboard, which has up to 26 separate windows with various types of information and tasks based on the user role. Here you can see various dashboards with assignments for work orders, moves, adds, and changes, information about the portfolio. As noted in the previous image, you can see the 14 tabs located at the top of the screen. The portfolio and space keep track of buildings and floors, campuses. Programs, pipelines, transactions, they're all interrelated, and projects all related with project management. Lease management is offered also in the application. The asset, work request, work orders, and document management modules all make up our maintenance management application. In this case, we'll start off by looking at the portfolio and pulling up information on that building out at Hunters Point Naval Shipyard. As you can see, every time we go into a module on different screens, the menu offered on the left-hand side changes. By selecting the Hunters Point property, it pulls up a window where you can see information stored in the Bricsnet system about that property. Some of this information may have come from the Onuma environment, pulling in information from the first and second floor. Here you can see the various stakeholders relating to that property. It could be the property manager, it could be occupants in the building, it could be contractors. There's also a window that basically shows critical dates relating to that property and that in this particular building. By going to the space module, we now can take a look at the number of floors. What's important to note here is that you're only seeing 2 floors, the first and second floor. Meanwhile, in the BIM model, there are 3 floors being displayed. And we can see this BIM model in the Google Earth environment. As you can see here, we're now looking at the BIM model in Google Earth, and it's displaying 3 floors. We'll pan around to get a better view of those 3 floors. What you're seeing right now, the red and green, those are areas on the first floors, as well as you can see, there's suite 1500 and 1700 on the first floor. There's also a vacant retail space. And now we start to look at the center core of the building where there's the elevator lobby, mechanical rooms, and other areas. Now we're looking at 2 floors. We're looking at both the first and the second floor, and now we're looking at the various rooms on the second floor. Now we can see all floors of the building, the first, second, and third floor. And as you can see here, we can pull out the mechanical room, elevator lobby, all the rooms relating to this building. We also have the ability to run multiple types of queries. In this case, we're looking at the facility condition index of all the rooms in the building, first, second, and third floor. And as you can see on the right-hand side, the areas in red denote areas that are problematic and require significant work to remediate the problems. Gives an idea of where you need to focus your budget dollars in the future. We also have the ability to look at all sorts of various queries, including, say, illumination for the building. What areas require greater illumination? This may be a valuable tool, not just for identifying your illumination from the exterior windows to the interior core, but also when you want to do consider relamping. Now we're just looking at a department view, as you typically would with most computer-aided facility management or IWMS applications. The only thing different here is that you're seeing all 3 floors at the same time, something that you typically can't do with a IWMS or CAFM application. Going into the Onuma environment of the BIM model, we can start to look at rooms and take a look at the assets in those rooms, the mechanical, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. In this case, we're looking at a hot water heater, electrical subpanels, the air handling unit, and we're just kind of highlighting the unique ID for those particular pieces of equipment. Here you can see a variable air volume box. And again, all this information of these assets, we want to get this information into the Bricsnet environment without having to have people manually re-enter. Now remember, we only had 2 floors. What we had just looked at was the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor currently does not exist in the Bricsnet environment. We are looking in the Bricsnet environment right now at rooms on the 1st floor. And as you can see, we have room numbers, we have types of rooms, we also have the square footage. Here we're in the Bricsnet environment and entering our credentials for the Onuma environment, where we will then pull in that information that's from web services on basically a click of a button. Here we're going to request information about the 3rd floor. So we're now doing that transaction live, from our system and our data center to Onuma's data center. And as you can see, 73 spaces and 14 assets were added into the Bricsnet system. By going back to the space module, you can now see that where there was only 2 floors before, there are now 3 floors. And here are the rooms, the types of rooms, whether they're vacant, assignable, what their square footages are. Now, if we look at the assets that are in the system that just came in from the Onuma environment, we can see things like the air handler unit number 1, which is on the 3rd floor. And the reason why we point that out is because we're going to cut a work order that's going to involve that air handler unit. Jumping back into the Onuma environment, we want to be able to show you that we can display work orders within the Onuma environment that originate from the Bricsnet system. So the point here is that there's a two-way data exchange. It's not just pulling information from the BIM model into Bricsnet, but also Bricsnet sending information back up into the Onuma environment to the BIM model in a GIS platform. So the point there was a list of work orders. However, the new work order that we are going to generate does not exist in that list right at this point. So what we'll do right now is we'll create a new work order. In this case, it'll be a cold call. We'll pick the Hunters Point building. We'll pick a location if we know it. And here you can see the new work order. We'll type in some additional information about that work order. In this case, the call center might pick a room where they think the problem may be originating, in which case they're picking the mechanical room and they're thinking that it may be coming from the air handling unit because they may have had other calls of similar nature. We'll go ahead and post that work order. Now, going back to the Onuma system, we'll now, pressing that button will now pull through web services that newly created work order, showing you that there is a bi-directional exchange, not just from the BIM environment to Bricsnet, but from Bricsnet back up into the Onuma and BIM environment. Here we'll pick the third floor in the Onuma environment, looking at that BIM model. And as you saw before, we were able to run a variety of queries. In this case, we'll run a query on saying, show us the work orders, in this case by severity. So you can see all of a sudden that work order request is now assigned to that room where the air handling unit is. And you can see whether it's, in this case, running another query. Is it urgent? Whose responsibility? Is it an inside contract or is it in-house? So now we're looking at the second floor where we've had, the customer has been occupying that space for quite some time and has a longer history of work orders. So here are a series of work orders in various stages of, criticality and priority. Tells you whether they're open or closed. Again, who's responsible for completing those work orders, whether it's a contractor or in-house staff. looking at the first floor, essentially doing the same thing, looking at various type of work orders. So there are several work orders on the first floor. And again, different levels of severity. So where are you going to assign your facility maintenance folks? Are you going to assign them at the most critical place? That's most likely where you'd want to put them. So this tool helps you assign the right resources, have the right resources, and assign them to the proper areas. And again, the point that we're showing is that if we can move all this information about work orders, really then we can start to think about taking all sorts of other information such as portfolio and occupancy and lease information and project information, and then pull that information back up into the Onuma environment. As in the value proposition for the architectural, engineering, and construction phase, for the facility management phase, the labor savings here would be really about not having to have people manually re-enter information from paper documents and electronic documents into the IWMS application, to basically improve the data quality because people are not doing manual data entry, reducing the number of keystrokes and errors, and then quick access to improved data and analytics. And that could be in the form of reports, dashboards, back in the building information model, in the GIS environment. There's enormous amount of value from this type of integration, and be able to do the advanced analytics in a GIS environment with access to a lot of this information on mobile devices. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation today, and if you're interested, our contact information is bricsnet.com. Also, the information is posted here on the screen. You can contact me, Andy Furman, Vice President of Product Development for Bricsnet Enterprise. We'd be happy to discuss the possibilities with you in greater detail. Thank you very much. We look forward to talking with you.